Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're ready to start the meeting. At this time, I'd like to call today's meeting of the Texas Racing Commission Rules Committee to order. The time is now 9:10 a.m. I'd like to welcome the attendees joining us in Austin and those who are joining us. It's 9:09. I just got corrected by my watch. Thank you. I would like to welcome the attendees joining us in Austin and those who are joining us online. Last year, we developed an aggressive plan for rule review with specific roadmap and goal of repealing the current rule set and replacing it with an updated version that aligns with our statute, increases integrity and safety standards, and modernizes the use of technology platforms for both agency and industry. Based on the updates to our statute and the documented risk at training facilities, the agency staff have proposed rule amendments for public comment. These rule changes were presented at the October 18th, 2023 Commission meeting, and comments are being solicited online through our webpage. In addition to the changes proposed by the staff, industry representatives have proposed language that will modernize technology platforms available for use at our racetracks. I appreciate the engagement of the industry in our rulemaking process. I cannot promise that we craft the rules the exact way that you think they should be crafted, but we will craft them to comply with our statute and industry best practices, and also your input is being heard and considered. We may disagree on terms used or process steps required, but I think we can all agree that as we prepare for the 2024 racing season, our shared responsibility is to increase the safety and integrity for the Texas horse racing industry. Section 2, public comment. On to agenda item 2, public comments. Denora, has anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Denora will be keeping time. We try to go to 3 minutes. We want to hear what you have to say, so we're going to try to give you some flexibility, but also we don't need to carry on and on and on. Public comment cards may include those who signed for the record. So do we have public comments?
I didn't get the cards back. I do bring.
Are folks still filling those out?
I have a question. If we submitted comments online, do you need to do this as well?
So do you want me to stand up and give the report, and then if there's any additional public comments?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's do that. Good morning, Commissioner McNabb. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Amy Cook, the Executive Director of the Texas Racing Commission, and I'm honored to be here today for this Rules Committee meeting. I think it's important that we have public dialogue and conversation around conforming with the intent of the Governor's Office and the Legislature as I continue to lead a great team in rebuilding the credibility of the agency. With respect to the Rules Committee today, this meeting was arranged here in the George Bush Building at the request of the industry, and I do agree it's appropriate when possible to try to have a public dialogue on critical changes. With respect to the 9 rule amendments that you see in your meeting materials today, the first 2 directly address the licensing program. This statutory change is noted in the agency Chief of Staff's briefing at the June 2020 regular commission meeting, when the updated Racing Act was expected to be published by the legislature on September 1st of 2023. Once it was published online on September 21st, we did note that there were conforming requirements to Chapter 53 of the Texas Occupations Code, which is the section of the Occupations Code followed by all other licensing agencies. One thing that we did not initially see but then came to realize was that there's a specific section in the statute that was repealed, and that section is 2025.260, which was our authority to issue temporary licenses, and that we understand was as part of Legislative Council, which is the group that goes through statutes. Once they took the bill, which was House Bill 1620, and went through it, and it was filed on the floor and passed by the legislature, that section of the statute no longer remains. So therefore, these licensing rule changes are now, in an expedited fashion, proposed to align the rules of racing with the updated version of the statute. I presented the draft licensing rule on October 18th at the regularly scheduled commission meeting. Public comments were received through the webpage, approximately 40, between October 18th and October 25th. which communicated the initial draft of the licensing rules was unclear as to the purpose of the 31-day timeline. That timeline was meant to be a due process timeline for those applicants that would not necessarily meet the qualification standard. It was not meant to be a waiting period. So there was a misunderstanding that that was some sort of waiting period for all licensees, new renewals and all that. To clarify that, I adjusted the language and republished the meeting materials. And so now it reads more like that all applicants are entitled to notice and an opportunity to respond to eligibility determinations based on criminal history records. One thing that's significantly changed is that if you think you may not qualify for a license, you have the ability to have your criminal background analyzed by us, and you get a decision on that before you go into the licensing process, rather than getting denied and going through that process. You have additional due process rights under Chapter 53 that we're implementing. The updated version of the rules is found on pages 3 through 6 of the meeting materials today. Based on the feedback as well, I created an additional executive summary that's on page 2 of the meeting materials that sort of outlines, why is it that these rule changes were made and what were the changes to the Texas Racing Act. This was not the only change. There were specific changes to the statute that allowed the agency to become more modern in terms of the way it manages its fiscal position on behalf of the industry and the legislature. The industry's engagement and efforts to understand the changes we are making to become a more credible agency are very much appreciated. And so, I think we're all best served by demonstrating respect for it and effectively implementing legislative decisions to align our agency more closely with occupational licensing programs that are followed by all state agencies. So that's the first 2 rules. The second 3 are directly related to training facility license, the operational workout requirements. Those changes, and there was a little bit of comment question on that, are really designed to the period of time in which official works are being conducted. So when the racetracks applied for training facility workout times this year, they applied at the same time that they applied for live race dates. And our intent is to create one master calendar so any horseman in the state can see where to get an official work, what time you can do that. During that period, what we're asking the racetracks to do, and we did remove the training facility license fee of $1,800, is to have the same level of paramedic and equine ambulatory support for horses and humans during training facility workouts. That change is proposed from my direct observation this summer at a number of racetracks, as well as the concern that we had that of the equine fatalities that we've had in Texas in this fiscal year, we've had 21. We count all of them. We count the ones that die in stalls that are at a racetrack, there were 4. The ones that are injured or banned off, maybe have to be later euthanized within 24 to 48 hours, and there were 9. There were 8 deaths at training facilities this year, and that causes us great concern that the level of risk is just as high when you're doing the activity to prepare yourself for live racing. So therefore, we think having the human and equine first aid standards at the same level is important. There was also a change that there was a question about, which was about e-wagering plans. E-wagering plans are supposed to be on file with the Racing Commission, approved by me as part of the Live Racetrack Association preparation for the season. There is a line that we added in there that really tries to distinguish between training facility official works, so there shouldn't be any e-wagering at the same time as training facility official works, just to make sure we distinguish the 2, or that no one is gathering information on the training facility works that could be used in live racing. If there's a way in the e-wagering plan to draw that bright line and just make sure that we're not crossing the line that you can't gamble or wager during official works, then that's all we were trying to do, is draw that line so everybody understands it. If there's a better way to word that, we have not published the rules in the Texas Register. Certainly willing to listen to any comments that you have on that, but we're trying to make sure that we continue to just align ourselves clearly with our statute and also make it clear to licensees about how to conform to that. The third part of your meeting materials is the e-wagering proposal recommended by the industry. Mr. Azzopardi got up and mentioned that in his comments at the commission meeting. There's a letter from him in the meeting materials as well. So he's here present in the room if there's any questions on that. And what I would like to do now is just turn it back over to Dr. McNabb and any public comment if there's any comment or questions on that. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Amy. So before we get into individual rules, does anyone have any comment? for overall going into this. Okay, all right, well, let's address topic 1. 16 Texas Administrative Code 311.101 for horse owners. Do we have any comments on this? This is licensing for horse owners.
Jen, can I ask just a general question?
Sure.
I'm not really, I submitted written comments that I'm very confused about some things that I don't understand.
Taylor, where's our, we have a portable microphone? That should make sure that everybody, because if you have a question, then someone else may also.
Okay, thank you. I'm Mary Real with Texas Thoroughbred Association. I'm not real familiar with a lot of the processes and what they mean specifically, and I know that we're talking about conformity with the Texas Administration Code or Texas Occupations Code. Are we required to conform to all other agencies?
We are required to conform with state statute.
And what does the state statute read? That's what I can't find.
So, that's kind of a broad question.
I understand.
So, can you be more specific? I mean,
Well, where you're talking about our licensing, that we need to conform with
so we're,
statute, and things have changed, but I don't see where that language, specific language is that we're trying to get to.
so Chapter 53 Texas Occupation Code specifically gives additional due process to applicants that may have had a criminal background. In conforming us with that, which all Texas state agencies use, Chapter 53, and then they publish guidelines under it. So once we get the rule change done, we're gonna have to publish guidelines. We're gonna have to update our application form. That's gonna be something that we go through and try to get redrafted as soon as this part is over, and then get that out to you for comment as well. The ability to get a Texas occupational license is not something you can get the same day. Not in any particular occupation in Texas.
Because it's prohibited?
It's not prohibited, but the practice is to get the criminal background and review it and make sure that someone is qualified to that occupational license. If there's any other qualifications like a horse trainer has to do, that's 2 tests, right? And then issue the license. That's the way the Texas law is constructed. We have not operated within the Texas law, and if you look at the last Sunset Commission report in 2021, we were told we need to conform with the way Texas does licensing overall. So if you go back and look at the 2021, it's on the Sunset Commission page, we weren't conforming to what the normal licensing standards were in Texas, which is this criminal background check, having the fingerprints on file, which is done through the DPS clearinghouse, which is a nationwide check, and then having the ability, if something changes and you get in trouble, to know that you got in trouble and maybe you're disqualified from that license and go through that due process. We haven't done that correctly in the agency since it was formed, is what I understand. So now we are being told through the sunset reviews, through the legislature almost abolishing the agency, it's time for you to conform and be more like other agencies operate. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. I still have a further question on that line. Say I'm a trainer, and I have been licensed in the past, and then whatever happened, COVID, so on and so forth. I haven't been licensed in a couple of years. So I need to go through this process again, which, do I have to go through the background check again?
You should only have to do your fingerprints once. Once we have your digital fingerprints on file, then all we have to do is check and make sure you have an updated background. So different from before where there was fingerprint cards every 3 years, that was sort of what everybody thought. The statute actually says we have to look at your background every 3 years. Well, that's actually outdated language, because once we're subscribed to your record. So in my particular case, there are 3 agencies subscribed to my record. One is the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I had to go in and get my fingerprints separately, give it to Texas Commission on Law Enforcement so they could review my record. The Real Estate Commission, before I came to work here, has my fingerprints on file, and the Texas Racing Commission. If I go out and commit a crime, they're gonna know. All 3 agencies would know is they're subscribed to my record. It also is a way to do identity verification. So you don't have to go back once we have your fingerprints. But if they have never done digital fingerprints through Identigo, then we would have to have them do that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do I have to take the Turner's test again?
I would say no. But then again, I would rely on the chief steward, how long it's been, and whether or not you've raced in the last few years.
Okay. Question about Identigo do all other state agencies use that?
Yes.
They don't have the ability to
No.
do licensing?
We
within
all
the
use
offices?
that. We all have interagency's agreement with DPS, who runs the clearinghouse. And we have to meet certain standards to be able to use that. Because yes. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have anything
Not
at
at the moment.
the moment?
Go ahead.
2 points there.
Go ahead and identify yourself.
Marcia Roundtree, Executive Director of Texas Horsemen's Partnership. I have 2 things in this section. Getting rid of the emergency license provision is self-explanatory, but that says emergency license, it doesn't say temporary license. Matter of fact, in the Sunset Review, it says that in 2029, Sunset shall review the Texas Racing Commission's authority to issue a temporary license. So I don't see how this translates to deleting temporary licenses. Emergency license, yes, but there could be 2 different things. But the Sunset Review actually says that they are going to review the Racing Commission's authority to issue a temporary license. So how does a temporary license conflict with this new statute?
Great question. So our House Bill 1620 was a Sunset Commission bill. It was filed by Representative Holland, who's the Vice Chair of Sunset. So we did not have a regular bill that went through to change the statute. The Sunset Commission considered doing an interim study on how we were doing. They decided not to do that, but when they take any agency and they make changes to a statute through the Sunset Bill, in that agency's statute, what the Sunset Commission will review when you go back and sunset is listed. In that same section you read off, whether or not general revenue interest should have been paid, whether or not our cash carryover change was appropriate, whether or not the conform with Chapter 53 was followed. That section of the statute is what they will review when we go back in sunset. It is not authority to continue temporary licensing. They repealed that. And so along that line and along the line of an emergency license, we have to run these conforming rules through the governor's office. The governor's office believes, and their guidance is, that emergency licenses are much like temporary licenses and we no longer have the authority because that section was repealed. So all of this is conforming to Chapter 53, and that's the read of the governor's office on the rule changes.
The other thing that Mary brought it up, and I'd forgotten about it actually, and so I don't have the statute in front of me, but I've become very familiar with statutes over the last week. There is a portion of the statute that very specifically says that a person that is getting fingerprinted shall be fingerprinted by a peace officer of any state or at any district office of the Texas Racing Commission. That statute says a peace officer or in a Texas Racing Commission office. It doesn't say that there's any provision or authority or an allowance for those fingerprints to be taken at a third-party contractor's facility. So I just want to make sure if we're going to align ourselves with statute, that we're aligning it all the way down, and we need to address that. And what does that mean when it says a peace officer of any state, or that they can go to I forgot the word that it said, but a Racing Commission field office and be fingerprinted?
Yeah, I have your comments here. I mean, I think the statute that we have is out of date in many ways. It's out of date for technology, and one of the technology changes is that the Department of Public Safety put in place this DPS clearinghouse, the Identigo digital fingerprints, because we used to do physical fingerprints and we did fingerprint cards. The Gillespie County Fair Group actually did fingerprint cards. They still have to be mailed to Identigo, go back through the same process even if they are fingerprint cards. Fingerprint cards are mentioned in the statute as well. So DPS has changed that process for all state agencies. If we have a licensing responsibility in Texas, whether it's us, Vet Board, any licensing agency has to have an interagency agreement with DPS. We pay for the fingerprints that you all come in and do, and we pay to be able to see the results. And so that process has changed for all state agencies in Texas. So
But
the
it's not
statute
in
is.
statute.
Correct, the statute has not been modified, but then the statute has rarely been modified in years and years and years on the basic fundamentals of programs like licensing and enforcement.
But again, I'm saying if we're going to change statute, or we're gonna change rules and protocol and procedures at the agency because of these statutory changes, and we're doing it, not just doing it, but we're doing it in an urgent way, so that they had to be published before we had a meeting like this, I'm asking, how is it that we have this workaround to a very clear statute that's in place, even though it may be old and antiquated, it's still there, it was not changed. The legislature, this session, the legislators did not have the intent to change that, or they would have changed that when they changed this.
So what are you asking us to do, to not go to Identigo?
I'm asking to comply with statute. You're saying we have to comply with statute in these ways, correct? Then why would we not have to comply with the statute that's written that the fingerprints can be taken by a peace officer or in the racing commission offices?
And like I said, that is transition from racing commission offices to Identigo with the technology change. And I would say that since we don't make the law, you know, and we had House Bill 4115 filed by industry representatives, and there were some changes in there that would have modernized the statute. I don't know that this was one of them, but there were a lot of changes in there. That bill didn't pass. And so I would say that next time we have session, all of these conforming changes that modernize the Racing Act and modernize the way we do business, I would request you come together and let's discuss what those changes are, because the agency almost didn't make it through this fiscal year without a statutory change. We could not have survived right now had we not had the general revenue money that was appropriated by the legislature, had that interest provision be struck. And I want to just explain that. So we had gotten some money for drug testing, $1.3 million to administer drug tests in general revenue, which was designed to hopefully help fund the lab and fund some other things. If we had not had a statutory change that the Sunset Commission did, we would have had to have the industry pay that back with interest the next fiscal year, meaning we really couldn't have spent that money. That was a change that they made. No other state agency in Texas has interest payments back to the legislature on appropriations they get. So that's a good example of how outdated the statute is in many ways. The fact that the legislature picked a couple of key changes that we said were tied to our fiscal survival, quite frankly, and the Chapter 53 conformance and picked that up out of Sunset, those are the things they thought were most important in the session with everything else going on. When we go back again next session, and I'm not the one that really should be advocating for it because we can't lobby one way or the other, but I would say that some of the modernization language of technology, like the proposal for e-wagering is trying to modernize the rules independent of the statute, really need to be addressed for us to become a fully functional, credible agency. So I hear what you're saying, but the technology process has changed. So now it is Identigo contracted with DPS that takes the fingerprints on behalf of DPS. They go directly to DPS and we have access to them because we're subscribed to the record. That's how that works now in that same section.
That technology has not created a better environment. It's created more problems than it's solved. My own personal experience, I needed a license and it was time for me to be fingerprinted. How old do we have to be before you don't have to be fingerprinted anymore? 70? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting close to the age so you don't have to be fingerprinted anymore. But I had to go get fingerprints. I called 3 different Identigo operations and only one of them could make an appointment within the next 2 weeks, so I made my appointment 2 weeks. The morning that I was supposed to go, they sent me an email that said, "We're sorry, we're closed today, we can't do your appointment, you need to find someone else." So that was 2 weeks I waited for that, and then I made another appointment at another facility, they canceled. And so 3 weeks later, I was able to finally get an appointment, and then when I went, they told me that they couldn't take my fingerprints because I didn't have any. They kept putting them on the machine and saying, the thing kept coming up, not registering, not registering. I had 1 fingerprint out of 10 that registered. So technology is not always the answer to everything. Just with my experience, we also have a lot of people that live and work in the barn areas that don't have vehicles. They live there, and it's very difficult for someone to find the time to take them off site to go get fingerprinted.
Well, you can go to any police department and get a fingerprint card. and get it done for a couple dollars and mail it to Identico. Those instructions are also on the website. I mean, we have out-of-state veterinary applicants that are doing that as well. I think, you know, I will check on what the age limit is. I don't know that there's
No,
an age limit.
I already did it, so that was just a,
But I
question.
mean, I think Chairman Pate said it best. It's time for us to start planning ahead to make sure that everyone is successful and is fully licensed by the time they want to engage in an activity that requires a pari-mutuel license. And plan ahead as much as possible. And you're the key, you four right here are the key to getting that message out.
getting the message out is the easy part. Solving the issues that it creates is the difficult part. I don't represent jockeys. Mr. John Beach does, and does a great job of it. But I've had calls from 3 different jockeys in the last week that ask me this question. If I'm supposed to come and ride 2 stakes horses in Houston, I don't know until the week before when we're doing entries that they've named me on those horses. I don't have a Texas license, so I can't come and ride in those stakes races. Same thing with those trainers, out-of-state trainers. They don't know until they enter a horse in multiple races around the country. They don't know in advance of entering that horse in the race. They're nominated, but they haven't been entered yet. They can't get a license in time.
So there's only 31 states now, I think maybe it's 30 that are doing horse racing. A horse is typically only eligible in certain states and certain races. One horse owner told me that what his trainer told him was, hey, these are the states where your horse is competitive. Get licensed in those 3 states and stay licensed in case we have an opportunity. That seems like a planning ahead mindset. So, I mean, we did not have to do a rule change to communicate the change. We could have just started enforcing the law. But I went through this process because I thought it was important to have this conversation. And it's not an easy conversation, I get it. Change is very hard. You know, I took over an agency that almost wasn't. Changing it is very hard. But one thing that has been very consistent with Judge Pate, Dr. McNabb, and I, we follow the Texas law. When it comes to HISA, we follow Texas law. When it comes to Rotama's challenges that have now been overcome because of some great leadership and great decisions by Penn, we follow Texas law. We're going to follow Texas law here. And I think people need to actually, if there is a problem we run into, then I need to know that. And that's something that we use to educate members the next time that we go through session. But a change has been made that we didn't advocate for. You won't find it in my LAR. You won't find it in the strategic plan. It was made to conform us with other state agencies, is what we understand. So we're going to do our best to conform with that. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We're trying to make sure that we conform with the law because we're the regulatory body that has the requirement to do that.
Can I make an injection? On part of this change, just going in and doing fingerprints and then giving someone a temporary license did not meet the legislative intent or the law enforcement intent to actually check and see if someone had a criminal background. So just having ink on your fingers doesn't mean that you're clean or not clean. That is just the beginning. I hear what you're saying on the difficulty in getting into Identigo, and I think that there is latitude, that there needs to be some kind of accommodation. You know, I think we need to work, you know, whether that is up to us or we ask DPS what their recommendations are, how we can have better access. But that is the entry point to a process that we need to, by statute, we need to assure that we do not have people with criminal backgrounds and people that do not belong on the racetrack allowing to participate. And also, we are fully committed to due process. So just saying fingerprints and then run the background check, that's done, we're good to go. If we do not give people due process, then we have wronged those citizens. So that is the time, and we are committed to that. Unlike other regulatory bodies in the industry that do not adhere to due process in Texas, we do put that in.
Do we know how many people in the last 2 years of all the people that have been licensed, how many of those people have been disqualified from licensing because of a background check?
I do not know those numbers, but as far as the statute goes, we are, the industry that we are in, the concern is that people who have a criminal background are not allowed to participate, or if indeed there needs to be accommodation, then there's due process, and that is by statute, and that is what Texas requires. the other part that Amy said, and I do have to reinforce, yes, indeed, not everything is perfect. We know that, and there are things that seem to be contradictory and some things that truly are contradictory. But when it comes to making statute, making law can be a sausage-making process, but how good the sausage is has a lot to do with the input. So I do encourage you all, it seems like, okay, legislative session isn't this coming year, it's not until a year past, that it doesn't take that long. I would strongly recommend, the agency cannot lobby. They cannot go to legislators, key legislators. You all have very influential people throughout the state. You all have very influential people whose names are probably known to very influential legislators. It is not too soon, if you feel very strongly about things that need to be changed in statute, your representatives in the industry are the ones who can talk to people who make law. Those lawmakers then can ask us, what about this? We can provide consultation. We can provide, the agency can provide information. But truly, this is not just a one-way thing coming down, and you all have got a great voice. When you take a look at all the people that you represent, and many of those people are very influential and know legislators, please engage your legislators. If there's things that you feel strongly about, the statute needs to be changed. That's how this sausage is made. The agency, the team here, then, senator representatives can say, I'm hearing a lot about this and that and that and this. Come and help me understand. That's when we go up there and say, here's what our rules say. If they say, well, that isn't right, that needs to be changed or by statute, please participate in the process. But there's a level of that process that, we look forward to you all. We look forward to seeing you as we go up to provide information if you all think that things are not as they should be. Because we must adhere to statute. Just like at the last meeting, I was talking about if the tracks have rules of how they're going to do things at the track, they cannot make their rules less restrictive than ours. We cannot make our rules less restrictive than statute. That's how this agency nearly got squashed because they were not staying in line with statute.
I have a question about due process. And still this goes back to the licensing timeframe. Say I apply for a license. For some reason you deny it or whatever. So I should have the opportunity to appeal that. I wanted to enter my horse next week. I know that that's not going to happen.
Right.
So why is this long time period necessary?
So chapter 53, so first you get a predetermination before you apply. If you'd like to do a predetermination, you can do that. Once we get your fingerprints back, which typically takes about 10 days through UPS, you do your fingerprints, they come back. Sometimes they come back sooner, but typically 10 days is what the expectation is from the clearinghouse to getting them in our subscription account so we can see them. We owe you a 30-day notice, and you have the opportunity to respond. So actually, I had made a mistake when I did the 31 days. Chapter 53 actually gives you 30-day notice. So we actually should have a 60-day window of planning time. If you think you have a problem, the person is going to know if they have a criminal conviction. We know if we have a criminal conviction. I would say to the population that you have that has a previous criminal conviction, and we'll be publishing the criminal guidelines. The ones we have are outdated, they're from 2001. We'll be publishing all of that so that you can take a look at that and educate your folks. If they know they have a criminal conviction that might be disqualifying, then they should early. Those are the people that need a plan early. Not everybody, but at the same time, we've got to have the criminal background back. If you're clear, then it should not take 30 days even. But on the point that I want to make sure, you're talking about identigo access. I've not had anybody internal to agency that we were vetting for employment, myself included, when I went for a TCOL fingerprint, not be able to get an appointment the same day or within a day or two. Now, what I have talked to Leonard about and we're looking into is maybe we get some low-cost terminals that we put at the racetrack. So if someone wants to go in there, do their application online, because we're going to try to get that to be an online application process, hopefully sooner rather than later, even with the loss of the database, this amazing human being back here that's recording this meeting is trying to figure out how to get an online licensing application process up and running again. Because right now we're working off of paper, which is not good for anybody. That will enhance the process, you know, educating people what might be disqualifying, and also giving them a quick way to get in there might really help, you know, actually everybody get licensed more quickly or renewed more quickly. But the main thing is stay licensed. You know, don't wait for something to happen, then get licensed, which is the culture that we've had. We've had jockeys standing in the racing office at Houston. The races have already started, wanting to get on a horse, and people were calling me on a Saturday going, can I let this person in? At that point, we were using the temporary licensing process to handle those last minute things, but we've lost that authority now. So it's difficult for us, but we need your help to make sure we make that shift, and that we plan ahead and we actually get everybody licensed. I get that it's a very seasonal, very ever-changing thing, but I also think that if you want to compete in anything, you got to get off the bench, know what the rules are, and stay licensed and stay qualified to be able to be in that game. I think that's important.
Question. We're talking again, and I'm concerned about, you know, the people that need to be pre-qualified.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, I'm all for that. But why does that have to dictate what a normal, law-abiding, everyday citizen does that perhaps has been licensed before for whatever reasons their license has lapsed?
It doesn't.
Then why can't they be licensed at time of entry?
They can't be licensed. They have to be licensed when they enter the horse. Actually, when you move into the stall, you should be licensed. Because we have jurisdiction over you, you're in a restricted area of the racetrack if you're moving in during lockdown.
This sounds like HISA.
Okay?
I'm
So
sorry,
they don't
but
have
it
due
does.
process.
Changing,
How is it like HISA?
313-103, how does changing that from saying an owner or trainer must be licensed 1 hour prior to the post time of the first race of the day in which the owner intends to race the animal, how does changing that to say before making a request to enter a horse, how is that, which statute is that addressing?
Chapter 53. And the ability for the agency to have time to review your record, which typically takes 10 days, determine whether you're eligible, and get your license issued.
Can you show us chapter 53, that wording? I swear I cannot find it.
You type in, if you go to the Texas Legislature
Can you
online.
show it to us now? Obviously you have it,
I don't have it with me.
you've memorized it, you should be able to log into your computer
I
and
don't
get
have
it.
it, I don't have it memorized. I didn't realize there was.
You live in this office, can you not take a break and get it for us? That would put a lot to rest, Amy. No disrespect, it really would. It's frustrating when you cannot authenticate something. It is to me. I want to be able to go back to all my members and all of my board and say, this is it. This is the sentence. This is the paragraph. It is what it is.
So there's a link on the Texas Rules of Racing Licensing page.
I
So the
read
guidelines
it
of chapter
100
53.
times.
Okay. You follow the chapter 53
Yes,
link and
ma'am.
read it?
Yes.
So I don't know why bringing it down here helps.
Because I don't see what you're saying that is there that we have to conform to. I don't understand it.
Okay. I don't know what to say to that.
You could be helpful.
What, so I'm learning chapter 53 with you.
Then let's learn it together.
Okay, so the conforming rule changes are proposed to make sure that our population that we license follows certain steps so that we have time to actually make sure they qualify and have due process under chapter 53. Due process really means notice and an opportunity to be heard, which means a steward's hearing and a right to go to SOA, State Office of Administrative Hearings. That's almost a 60-day process, now that I understand that better. So for us to tell someone no and not give them that time, and they will have lost whatever opportunities, I can't fix it if they don't come and do it early, but I put the 31 days in there up front to encourage everybody to not rush to the counter when the races have already started, because that is not right. That does not give us time to make sure that people are who they say they are and that they are qualified for that license. And that's our job, is to make sure the right people are in the restricted area. Or if not, then, you know, there's no point in us being here. You go back to being an unregulated industry. I mean, if that's what you want, then I would say, you know, you really have to look at the big picture here. You need to have a credible, functional agency to have an industry. You do. And so my job was, when she and Judge Pate hired me, to make it a credible functional agency. And that means following the law, which is hard. Change is very hard to understand that. So that, we're having this meeting because you asked for it.
Right,
I'm
and
not,
I'm
not.
asking to understand, Amy, I'm not at odds with you.
Okay.
I'm really not, and I understand, and we want this agency to be well respected and to do its job well, and I think that you're making a Herculean effort to do that. But what I'm saying is, I've been in this industry 35 years, and I don't understand it. I can't explain it to someone else and make him understand it. Maybe I'm getting thick, I'm getting older, but that's for sure. But many of us are, and all I want is just say, here it is, and then explain to me why.
The key features on the statute are that indeed the background check is done and that the individual gets due process. And those are engraved in stone, that's the stake in the ground, and those are the lines we cannot cross. This was signed into law by the governor on the 1st of September, correct? So us saying, well, let's see how we can come, it's law right now.
But the statute that says you must accept fingerprints in all of your racing commission offices was also signed by a governor, and it is the law of the state right now, and so we're bypassing that statute, but not this one.
They're not mutually exclusive, but whether or not you get your fingerprints done at Identigo or, as you say, that still starts the process. That doesn't mean that the background check is done, because that,
Right.
the statute says the background check has to be done, and then time for due process needs to happen. One of the things that we are looking at, not a done deal, but what we're looking at, is to have opportunities, if people choose, have a 1-year license or a 3-year license. So jump through the hoops, do 3 years, then you have to remember 3 years from now, you have to renew. Having an online process hopefully makes it easier. We understand that we serve a constituency that a lot of those people online is not an easy thing.
It's sometimes
I
not
get it.
even an option.
I get it, and so that's why we're, if we have the opportunity to do things there and they can come in and, how we accommodate that strata of our industry, they're not invisible to us. We do see that they have very specific challenges, that we have people that, owning a computer and being online is way outside their economic capability. Got that. We also have got a whole lot of people that it's well within, and the fact that we have had a process that has not even come close to assuring the restrictions, that letting people come in and giving them a license because the races have started and we have to go, and well, here you go. We are swinging to at least come in within, and the statute says criminal background check and anyone that comes up with issues. And I can't imagine there's that many people floating around, even in our business, who have a positive criminal background check and don't know it. If you don't know that that you've been arrested and been through all the rest, then truly, how can you even rub a horse? But we have to make sure that people have got a clean background check, or if not, that then their case can be adjudicated, and if indeed a license can be administered, that we must give due process, and that is the law in the state of Texas.
And I think something that might help Mary, when Lisa Lazarus came last June a year back, and it was Commissioner Mock that said he was concerned about selective enforcement of the law. We've been engaged in selective enforcement with temporary licenses. In other words, we've given you a license because, oh my God, the sky's falling and the horse is running and this is happening and that is happening, without vetting people. And we didn't have the manpower to go back and get that license back from you and deal with the due process if you had a problem. We just didn't have the ability to do that. That's a form of subjective or selective enforcement. We also had criticism on subjective licensing practices, which means if I like Brown today, you get a license. If I don't like checks, you don't get one. So there were items in that sunset report found that you weren't treating everyone the same in the licensing process. This changes that. Everybody gets treated the same in terms of an expectation that you would plan ahead but not everybody's gonna take that long. If you are gonna renew today, you come and you renew, probably get it on the spot, because you've already done your background, it's already on file, and you're just doing your license application renewal, and it's done. That is a same-day process, renewing. But to say that the entire population doesn't have to go through the same process, that would be a form of selective enforcement. That is the chief criticism of HISA. And we haven't been doing the right thing with respect to giving everybody the same objective look at their record, everybody the same objective time to make sure that if they have a horse entered in 2 weeks, that we've at least notified them to have the right to appeal. Whether they appeal or not, but having some planning time for them, it means, it goes back to the same thing I've been saying. Everything we're doing as the agency actually has some shared responsibility to the industry. The racetracks have to pick up some of that responsibility and look and see if you're licensed when you enter your horse. We're talking to Brian right now, but when you move the horse into the stall, you should make sure everybody's licensed if the restricted area is locked down. Because we've got to move ourselves away from the culture where we're doing it all last minute to a point where we're pre-positioned to have everything in place, just like you would on your purse agreements and just like you would on all of the rest of it. The things that are important to you that you plan in advance for. We approved the live race dates in October this year, 3 months before the last ones, right? So now everybody knows what the 2024 season is. We're working on making sure there's an interactive calendar page everybody can see. But we're trying to plan ahead to help you plan ahead, but we need your help on this particular point.
The vast majority of the people that are going to participate in racing in Texas in 2024, the vast majority are participating in racing in 2023. My number one recommendation, if I was in your seat to your constituency, is go ahead and renew your license now. We've got 60 days before the 2024
But to
racing
that
starts,
point,
and be ready to go.
we're also gonna schedule additional licensing rodeos. We tried that out last year, but we're gonna go ahead and calendar them for the whole year where there'll be additional opportunities. If you want us to come to a meeting or an event or a sale where there's additional people there to have a booth and do additional licensing, we can do that. I'm willing to surge me and everybody else to help with licensing. We still have a very small licensing staff. We still have Denora covering chief financial officer and also licensing, but we're committed to making sure that we provide as much access as possible, because access is what matters. You know, that people have the ability to get licensed and they have access to it, like you said.
I think we could have prevented a lot of this dissension and angst that we've sort of all been going through for the last week. Anybody in this room that knows me well knows that I'm not going to ever go back and say, gee, I think the old racing commission was better, because it was not. I was one of the biggest advocates for the change, and it was a refreshing change, Amy, and it still is, to have you come here and do what you've done. But there was one thing that I think we all appreciated, and one, maybe only one process that remained in effect for all the 29, 30 years that I've been here. And that was regularly scheduled rule committee meetings. We had them alternate months for a long time. We'd have a racing commission one month, and then the next month, it was a regularly scheduled rules committee meeting. And it was, when I say a rules committee, it was an actual committee. It wasn't like a public discussion for public comment. We had a committee, and it was representatives of the recognized organizations, a representative from the tracks, would come. We had a legal counsel from the commission. Sammy Jackson was there for all the time that he was here, other staff members, and Commissioner Eder was the chairman of that rules committee for years and years and years. And we would meet, and anybody that had a rule proposal would bring that rule proposal, and we could just sit down and sort of brainstorm those rules. And if I brought in a proposed rule, Rob could say, well, that doesn't make sense at all. That won't work. And then Bart could come in and say, yes, it would, and here's why. So we could just sort of brainstorm and work it out. Is it a good rule? Is it a bad rule? Does it need to be changed, or does it need to be thrown in the trash? And so I think those sorts of engagements really, really help. And I think if we had sort of maintained, and I know the staffing issues have been horrific at the agency, but if we could begin that process again and have a committee before it goes to be published in the register, or before it goes before the commissioners. I didn't like having to stand up at a commission meeting and testify before you, Commissioner McNabb, about this. It was embarrassing to me to have to stand up and do it, but that's my job. So I think that could have all been avoided if we could get back into that routine and that protocol, fleshing out the problems. Those sorts of meetings, Mary's questions could have been answered in a committee meeting rather than this sort of meeting. We could have all understood what Chapter 53 means to the industry and to our rules. So I really think that that procedure, that protocol serves us all really well. And then if you need to satisfy the public meeting concept, after you've had your small group, then have a public meeting for public comment if it's necessary and you think you need to do that. But the small group that sit down and work with these rules every day, that seemed to serve the entire industry really well.
I appreciate what you're saying, and truly our intent was to have more of the discourse, but over the last year, life interferes, and so did the legislative session. So there were a few times that, as much as we were trying to lean forward and, make those discussions happen, also making sure that we do abide by the state agency requirements for, transparency. Some of that may have felt good, but may not have met those standards. So again, we're trying to raise the agency up, and it doesn't mean we have thousands of people. I think we look around the room and we certainly have key representatives and key voices here. I do apologize that we didn't have more meetings. It is our intent to have more. But when it got down to it, Amy just had to say, we have got to do legislative session or we're gonna disappear, and the whole thing had to focus there, and that and staffing. So on that, I do concur as we can, and we are leaning forward. Whether or not we have private meetings, probably not. There will always be a public transparency piece because we are going to abide by that as a state agency. But I think the discourse is important, and I think the back and forth communication is important to know what people are thinking and what the issues are.
Well, those meetings were not private and secret. They were held in the racing, we had them at the DPS, we had them at Texas Animal Health Commission in a state office building. We just had a table that sort of the worker bees were sitting around the table, but it was open to the public. Anybody could come and listen, and anybody could comment at that time. So it wasn't a private closed meeting. It was, you just had a group of people that were working on it, and anybody that wanted to comment or have input was certainly welcome to do so.
Well, I think that's, we can get very close to that, if not that.
Okay.
Again, we're just
Okay, thank you.
time and distance.
And some agencies call that a work group and then have a rules committee meeting and then go on. And so I took that note down. At least Mary Winston, who we've hired from TDLR, they do that sort of a format. So I'm learning too. I mean, I echo what Commissioner McNabb said. I mean, I don't think anybody expected some of the challenges we had this summer to happen. I think we have had a lot of challenges this year, which hopefully we've moved past. So I'm committed to having an agency calendar that has all the library dates, all the training facility dates, all the commission meetings, put the rules committee meetings on there, and then we can add in a layer of work groups as well, and just make sure we're having a regular conversation specifically focused on that. Because the rules themselves, we all know we're struggling on a number of different fronts in every section of the agency with some of the statutory language and how it doesn't match the rules, or how the rules conflict with each other, or how outdated some of the things are. I mean, if you look no further than executive director, somewhere it's capitalized, somewhere it says executive secretary, somewhere it's not I mean, and then, what I would say is, we think it's important to just, we had a roadmap and a way we're gonna do it. It didn't quite work. But we're willing to revisit that and the strategy for next year, really spend some time on it. I think this next year is really critical to really work on the rules, because then we're back in legislative session again. So there'll be a period of time where it'll be hard to be able to have these conversations. But I think certainly in 2024, we can make sure we have a regular forum to talk about your proposals and talk about what the staff sees needs to be changed, and work on this together.
And it's not impossible that some of those forums might be electronic. Texas is a big place, time and distance. Not everybody lives in striking distance of Austin. So
I just don't remember, and my memory may not be the best, but I don't remember in all the years past any of us or any representative standing up at a commission meeting and objecting to rules being put forward to go into the Texas Register. I mean, once it reached that point, everybody sort of had their piece, and and,
There was a lot of it prior to the fourth.
yes, yes.
But it's still, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's productive.
There's
I mean,
nothing
you
wrong.
called out something that everybody was perceiving as a waiting period that isn't a waiting period. So I modified that language to make it clearer. It's really meant to be a due process timeline for people that absolutely know they have a criminal conviction. It's not meant to do anything more than that. It's to give them a warning that they need to plan ahead if they have a criminal conviction to get their record vetted. So, I mean, typical rulemaking takes 120 days without rules committees, without, this is not something we're rushing into lightly, but I've been told since I got here by the governor's office, your agency does not conform to the rest of the state with respect to occupational licensing. So we need to start moving you to that so that you will survive through the next few sunset reviews. So that's been an ongoing conversation since then. What that looks like and how it looks now was not exactly what I expected, but it's not a surprise to me that we would be asked to be sort of more normalized in that respect for that foundational program.
The things that I'm hearing as the takeaways, and I see the little list is
Yep.
being written, is, number one, we can't change the fact that a statute was signed into law by the governor, and we have to comply as best we can. Number two, I would strongly encourage you to encourage all of the people who have held licenses and have licenses that need to be renewed. Do it. Don't wait until you go to the racetrack, and especially to your owners. We are working on getting the online renewal process going, but tell them, let's not count on this. And I think that is a key message to send out to your constituency. Do not count on being able to taxi up when you come to the races to see your horse run, to then renew your license. That
When
is another
my
time.
driver's license is about to expire and my vehicle registration is about to expire and a whole bunch of different licenses are about to expire, I get a reminder from the state. So that, a lot of times people, they use their license during a particular racing season and it expires and they don't look at it. They have no reason to see it or look at it. In Texas, Lone Star Park, the last thoroughbred race is in July. They have no reason to even look at their license until coming up on April. So it would be really helpful if they could just get a reminder that says, your license is about to expire 60 days before and it's time to renew.
Great point. Now, here's the deal. In the LAR, legislative appropriations request, was a request for $10 million. 2.7 of that was to become a member of Texas by Texas, which is where you renew your driver's license and your vehicle registration. That request was not adopted. When I testified, it would have been great to have the industry there going, this is really important because becoming credible with licensing and enforcement means having a functional database. So what we've done, and Nora's done a great job, is send out active licenses, and you recently asked to have the inactive or expired licenses on the list. So starting, I think, last week, she started sending out that list. So you at least have the list of who is inactive to send to your members. So until we can overcome, which, like I said, we asked for $10 million, we got basically $200,000 to spend. So with the $200,000 that we have, we're gonna do our very best to try to create some capability anyway.
Is the budgetary restraint the reason that we don't have the full staffing in the licensing office at the tracks?
Yes. However, we have run licensing specialist 4 and licensing program manager announcements, and I'm currently fulfilling the HR job right now, if you didn't know that. Since the summer, we've got no qualified applicants on that. So we're looking at changing that. There's a public safety records clerk and there's a criminal analyst position description. We're getting ready to put those out. I'm gonna put those out later this week. We're having difficulty finding the right people for those offices. So we've actually got some investigators because we had none of those. We've got more veterinarians now. We've got plenty of stewards, but licensing is where we're struggling because it's more of an entry level.
Okay.
But to your point, we were allowed 57 full-time equivalent positions in the latest budget. We did not receive sufficient funds to fund that full 57. So we think we can only have about 40 people, and I have to choose where those 40 people would be. There aren't a lot of people here. They're in the field offices, because that's really where they should be. At least 70% of the manning, 75 I would say at this point, is in the field offices doing exactly that and helping out with licensing. So that's the reality of where we are. There's a disconnect between the amount of money we received and what we're supposed to do, whether it's statutory responsibilities or number of FTEs. So we have 35 today, which means 3 in licensing with Denora pulling 2 positions at the same time, also sharing with the test barn staff who helped with licensing. So the more that you can help us, help them plan ahead, tell us where the licensing rodeos should be, not just at the tracks, but if there's other venues to do that, to get more people licensed. Send your prayers and thoughts to Leonard as he tries to program, you know, a licensing online portal with very little money, because I believe he can do that. We're gonna make it to the best of our ability and do the best job we can for you.
But in the meantime, if it's important to your members and your constituency, that it is, that we reach the same level of service that your driver's license and your hunting license and everything else, then let your legislators know that this is really important, because they're a racing industry and all their investment is all on the line. And this poor little agency just is not stepping up to the plate like the other agencies, so they need to be in this portal. Because as we bring our budget up there, and they say, we haven't heard anything about this. But if they're hearing about it, but we, you know, all we can do is say that we have the need. In the meantime, you know, we're trying to make magic out of air and dust and do the best we can. And we hear the need, and we hear that, you know, that we need to do more. But, you know, we're doing what we can with what we have. Thank you.
I have a question. Rob Worsley, Texas Portal Association.
Would you mind moving the microphone down to him, please?
I don't think I need it. You said earlier, once your digital fingerprints are on file, you won't have to get fingerprinted anymore.
That's right.
Okay, good. Because one of the problems is going to be, which is great news. So if I have grooms, and like these ladies alluded to earlier, a lot of them don't have transportation. So to get them digitally fingerprinted the first time, you're basically going to have to make all of these, try and coordinate all of these appointments and take them, throw them all in your truck, take them down and try and get them.
Or just take them to the police station. Fingerprint cards, usually they'll charge anywhere from $1 to $5.
Okay.
Just depending on staff time, and then the instructions for where to mail it to Identigo are on our website. If you're mailing.
And you
your
have to make
fingerprint.
reservations there too, or
Nope.
appointments? You just
I
walk
wouldn't,
in?
you should be able to walk in and say, I'd like to get a fingerprint card
Okay.
done, any police station.
Okay.
And that's actually the way the Gillespie County Fair Board did it.
Mhm.
There's no Identigo in Fredericksburg, they all work. So we worked with them, they planned ahead, they went to the Fredericksburg Police Department, and they went in, they were able to get fingerprints mailed into Identigo, and we had the results back before the races started.
And as Amy said, you should be able to walk in, but still, if I'm a constable in a precinct in, you know, San Saba County, I'd probably appreciate a call. Hey, I got 10 grooms I need to do. Can you handle me? And they'll say,
And you
yeah,
can
sure.
always call me or Denora. I mean, I think when it gets to, to look back at Marcia trying to get a license and couldn't get a fingerprint, I mean, at that point, we had temporary licensing authority. You know, we're always, we will always answer the phone and do what we can to facilitate any of that, you know. But doing it together is much better, and I would
But
agree.
Denora was great. I wouldn't have got, probably still wouldn't have a license if she hadn't stepped up and helped.
And Denora can call people directly if there's an issue, like if we're trying to get a group booking on appointments, maybe we can do that as well. I mean, I think there's ways that we can continue to work with DPS and Identigo to try to do that, because we are part of that contract.
You know, to tee up the ball so that going into 2024, you know, now is the time to put things out. If you haven't checked your license, don't wait for notification like your driver's license. Check your license, see, you know, call us, we have our list, and let's go through the process so everybody that is currently licensed can renew, be ready to go, and we don't have these crises at the stable gate or at the licensing office.
And so once you do, going back to grooms, they go get fingerprinted, can they go get their license immediately, or do they have to wait 10 days?
We need to be able to see the criminal background. It doesn't always take 10 days, but 10 days is what DPS tells us we have to say as a minimum standard. So sometimes it's back within 72 to 96 hours. It just depends on how quickly the location is processing fingerprints.
How does one know when it's back?
Denora and I check the DPS clearinghouse every day.
Okay, so at that point, the person whose fingerprints you're looking at is notified that they can go ahead and get their license?
There's not a way to notify them right now. But it's a great point that, you know, we're sending you the list of licenses inactive. We can send you the list of recent fingerprints received if that helps. You know, when you're talking about preparing for quarter horse meat or thoroughbred meat, if you have a specific person you're worried about, that's probably the easiest way to do it right now, because there's only me and Denora that are trying to manage some of this stuff. So I would say that, and of course Aaron and the investigators can see the criminal backgrounds as well, but I would say that that's why we wanted people to try to plan ahead. If you've got somebody, you wonder if their fingerprints are back, if they've turned their application, you can certainly give us a call and we'll see if their fingerprints are back.
But you don't have to
They
wait till
reciprocal.
2024 to get their fingerprints, you can start now.
Reciprocal from state to state.
It is not reciprocal, so here's why it's not reciprocal. Just like the description of, so if I want a Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Peace Officer license, I have to go separately, get my fingerprints, I have to be able to see it. In different states, some states use the Identigo clearinghouse process, some do not. Texas uses that. That's the way we do criminal justice checks, criminal history checks on those that are licensing, and that's actually Chapter 411 of Texas Government Code covers the occupational licensing. We're in that code as well. So if you go to, and I'll use National Racing Compact because this has been a discussion point this morning. If you go to National Racing Compact, they can do the application, they can mail it to Texas, but they can't do the criminal background check that we can see. So right now what we've been doing with National Racing Compact is when you come in and you've got that license application, we've been asking you to do the criminal background check fingerprints here. In reviewing our statute, and this was a question actually Marcia raised when she sent in her public comment on reciprocity, we can do reciprocity if we have a current agreement. We do not have any current agreements. I've approached Louisiana last year and Oklahoma when Kathy Kelly was the executive director. Now that John Chauncey's there, I've approached both of them to get a reciprocity agreement. We currently do not have a reciprocity agreement. And on the National Racing Compact, we're not actually a member state. On their website, we're shown as a participating state, but that doesn't mean we can see criminal history. We're not actually a member state because we haven't done an interstate compact. So we actually are going to have to discontinue reciprocity with them that we've been offering because that doesn't line up with Chapter 411 or Chapter 53. So these are in the licensing guidelines where we need to be able to say, you know, the ability to do reciprocity in some ways because of the connection to temporary licenses, and some of that has been removed.
The last time I was fingerprinted, they were digital.
Mm-hmm.
So will I have to get?
No, should be fine.
Okay, so basically a lot of the people that are already licensed probably won't have.
Probably not. I would say when we're talking about Chapter 53, we're probably talking less than 10% of the racing population has these challenges.
Are mailed-in fingerprint cards from out of state accepted?
Yeah, they go to Identigo, then it
Okay.
comes to DPS, we can see it, absolutely.
But the whole thing is doing that background check to meet Texas statutory standards.
So a
And
guy
that's
in
the
Iowa
problem.
could get fingerprinted there, send it in.
I have a veterinarian applicant from Montana. She went to Identigo in Montana, did the fingerprint card, and gave it to them in Montana, and it came here and I could see it.
But from like a law enforcement officer?
Anybody,
Okay.
yeah.
The other, again, this is where you have constituents that we have approached the two states that we probably have the most traffic with. And it doesn't mean we don't have people from others, but certainly Louisiana and Oklahoma. We've offered to them, we'd like to have a reciprocity agreement. And if it's not important to them, I'm sure that they're just like us. They got plenty to do to fill their day. But if their constituents are saying, hey, this is a tri-state thing, and so you all might be able to raise your voices and say, we want to have a reciprocity. It's good both ways. We want to reach out.
HBPAs could do that, I think that's important to sort of surface it through the industry side, which is to say reciprocity matters. I mean, I would really like to have an interstate compact, quite frankly, in our whole region, in our circuit, so that it's in our statute, it's in theirs, and there's no questions. But right now, it's not that clear. We may have a reciprocity agreement, they may have one, but we don't have any currently existing, because I've checked.
But you all can raise your voices and make it important.
So us urging our constituents in those states to reach out to the racing commission?
Yes.
Executive director?
Yes.
Because Charlie Garnier and John Chauncey know that I absolutely want to have a reciprocity agreement, not have people have to chase around and try to get a license in every state. We have to be able to do that for all of you.
And we appreciate it isn't, it's not animosity, it's just one of those, you guys want it, nobody's making it important on my agenda, so, you know, I have other things to do. So you can really help, and if we can make that happen, and your constituents raise their voices and say this is important to us, you know,
Commissioner, let me ask,
yes, ma'am.
on the National Racing Compact, there's two categories. There are compact members and participation jurisdictions, which Texas is a participant.
And
And I understand that that takes legislation to become a compact member.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would look at doing this
The-
next session?
the problem at this time is that organization's process does not meet the Texas standards on the criminal background check. So, the fingerprints and making those electronic, you know, help me here, the electronic
So
criminal background check.
they don't have
into
the
our
ability
database.
to, they are taking the name and date of birth, is what I understand, because we did a conference call with them, and they are running a criminal background check that way. They're not actually running the fingerprints, in such a way, it's the same problem as, we can't subscribe to whatever they can see, and they can't share it with us because of the criminal history prohibitions on sharing that information on people. It's a privacy thing. So, in talking to the executive director there, the deal there is with the member states, which we are not, the highest standard is followed. Well, the highest standard is not as robust as the Texas standard. That's part of the issue. That doesn't mean that couldn't change. I mean, I think that the ARCI connection, I've had a conversation with Tom Sage, who's the president of ARCI, about this. I think that our name got on that website somehow. I said, give me any agreement, anything from the former executive director on how our name got on there. And I don't even know how our name got on that website. It's just, it's on there as a participating state, but that doesn't mean that we have to honor it. We have been honoring it, but I think because it doesn't actually meet the standards we're supposed to follow, we have to stop honoring that.
Again, the requirement is we have got to follow Texas statute and process, so.
But I'm not saying no, I'm saying that I think that when we talk about next session, or when the industry talks about it, there's obviously gonna be some concerns I have with respect to the agency functioning, you know, as a state agency fiscally. But I think what your priorities are for legislative session, I would say that you need to get together and discuss what those are, and we need to have a conversation about that, because this session, we at least went into the session, I think, on pretty much the same page, which is the industry has to be able to survive fiscally. You know, we have to start modernizing some of that. The Chapter 53 alignment was just part of sunset and some of that, but, you know, in terms of going back and actually in a more aligned way, looking at everything from the Greyhound issue that we're tackling with, and what happens with the Greyhounds and their ability to race, you know, being difficult right now. That's a statutory consideration that actually was up in front of, you know, one of the committees on House Bill 4115. So I think there's some really key things that matter to the future of the industry and the economic engine that I think it's able to be, that I think that we could have conversations about. But of course, as Dr. McNabb said, we can't lobby, but we can certainly inform and listen to what your key concerns are.
You can lobby.
Right. Back to the list that we're getting, I haven't looked at that in depth. Is that something that we are allowed to publish on our website?
No.
So, do we have enough information to contact these people?
I believe so. Denora said,
Yes, on the list that we sent you,
Mm-hmm.
right now it's not for public, right, it's just for you guys.
Okay.
And, I believe that you will have the information that you need to contact them, either by phone, email, or something, some way for you to contact them.
Okay, so we are allowed to do that, but we can't
You can
publish.
contact them, but you cannot publish it.
Okay.
right.
And may I have a few minutes just
Yes,
to
ma'am.
mention something? I'm very happy that everybody's here. I really appreciate your words, Marsha. For the record, you know, as your CFO and licensed project manager, I'm sorry. I just want to assure you guys that whatever that you need, any questions that you have about this process, you can call me, you can reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to explain it to you. This has been the same thing that we've been doing, it's just now that we're enforcing it more. So just want to, you know, make it clear to you, whatever question you have, I can talk. No problem.
I feel like we're starting to circle, so we're not adjourning, but we've been at this now for an hour and 25 minutes.
I had a question from someone who's watching online.
Okay,
I don't know, as I said, my hearing is not the best, so I don't know if it was something that was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting and I just missed it. Did you say how many comments, what public comments we had online, in the portal that you established on your website? How many comments did we have?
41.
41? And were they for, against?
Somewhere less than constructive. These rules are stupid would be an example. That's not really helpful. And then, of course, so they come in through our public box. I'm currently monitoring that box, and I read all of them,
Okay.
which is why I changed the language in the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
And she has let me know, here's the summary of what we're getting, so that's, our
And I
discussion.
printed out yours
tonight.
and Mary's, and Brian's.
So can we take a 5-minute?
Sure.
10 minute? Okay, so we'll reconvene at 25 till. Reconvene. We appreciate the lively discussion about licensing, and I think there's been a lot of important things. Have we got all your input on that topic? I'd like to move on to the other items if we can. Is there anything else that we have not covered about your concerns with the licensing problem? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the application procedure, or have we covered that sufficiently
I
already?
think so. I think if you're ready to, if they're ready to move to training facilities.
Okay,
we can-
training facility license. Amy.
Well, I mentioned in my comments that there were some questions, Brian sent in some questions about when all this is required. It's really only required when official works are in progress. So hopefully that answers Brian's question on that. Did I answer your questions, Brian, or did you have any further questions, or did Joe or Bart?
And we have some edits that you've included in here with the secretary, making them all directors.
Right.
We had a comment about the e-wagering plan.
Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, but
Well,
with
it's
the,
in here.
Yeah, there's a sentence in
Oh,
this
is it? I'm so
particular
sorry.
one that ties the e-wagering plans to the training facilities. Essentially, what we're trying to do is, find the right page, it's on page
Page 8.
okay.
of the meeting materials.
So it says, a training facility licensee shall prohibit any wagering at the facility and shall promptly eject any person who is found to be wagering. And then in red type, all training facilities located at licensed racetracks must have an e-wagering plan approved by executive director as set out in section 321.603 at least 14 days before the first official work is scheduled to begin. So your concern on that?
Well, our one concern was we're a training facility in May,
Mhm.
and so the Kentucky Derby Day starts early on that day, and you're saying we can't take e-wagering,
No, we're saying we need to have an e-wagering plan in place.
so just for that day?
No, just, so for the,
Or for
for the
this-
whole
for the whole
season, you're
season.
supposed to have an
Okay.
e-wagering plan. If you're also going to be a training facility, then you'd have a section in there that would say, while we're running as a training facility, we will make sure that no one is out betting on the official works,
Okay.
which is
So
prohibited.
just
But
pertains to the works.
simulcasting should be fine,
Okay.
right? It's a matter of actually having a plan in place to make sure that we don't cross the line on having anyone at an official work observing that and placing wagers on that. So distinguishing between simulcast activities where someone may come for breakfast and want to do simulcast betting and just creating that line. And that's
Okay.
really about having that e-wagering plan in place, which currently we do not have any in place. So the licensed racetrack should have them in place. They're supposed to be approved by me, but this also supports the rule change that Mr. Azapart is proposing, which is the e-wagering plan is what we're really saying to the governor's office when we're talking about this rule change, keeps us within the lines of our statute, is not an expansion of wagering in Texas, but make sure that we are We are wagering within the statutory authority that we have and the rules that we have. So that's really the way to protect you from the activities you want to conduct by having it on file and approved by me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that was meant to just say, because there is a prohibition for training facilities, if we're going to modernize that, we also say that's included in the e-wagering plan so that it's clear that,
Okay.
that there's no wagering permitted on the training facility official works. Simulcast is a different matter. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
And as we went through this, and we get a chance to talk quite often, my concern was, there may very well be licensed training centers, that are not Class 1 tracks at other times. And indeed, we don't want those training centers to become locations for unauthorized illegal match racing. So
Correct.
that gambling thing, that's important. But I said, we want to make sure that the wording is such, because if it says a training center cannot have any wagering whatsoever, I said, then we're screwing our Class 1 tracks that have licensed simulcasting, which is essential to their ability to be in business. So I said, we want to protect the authorized simulcasting that is fully licensed, regulated, everything else. All we want to do is protect the horses and so forth from illegal match racing that they're calling official work. So we want to keep it clean, but also protect your simulcasting. So hopefully we have met that bar, because that's, with all the other things going on that make it tough to run, I do not want to put a dent in what you have already done to put that simulcasting in place. I also do want to commend the industry. I've said this before from, in the commission meetings and in these meetings. I'm delighted to see things move towards having our quality surfaces used for training as well as then being racing, because that then starts to become much more of a magnet for all of the supporting industries. If you only have racing occasionally, then the feed and all of the ancillary businesses, where if there are people who are working horses and you have that industry going and it's year round, bigger during the meet, a little bit smaller, but that there is a longer time that there are horses there, then I think all the ancillary business that feeds into this economic engine just gets better. And we know that those surfaces are quality.
And as you mentioned earlier, the training surface and the racing surface are equally important, in the health of the horses. And that's what we're trying to accomplish by treating the training facility just as if it were a live racing meet. Same schedule for our horsemen and for our workers and employees of Penn Entertainment. We want to make sure they're trained properly, they're going through a daily schedule the same way, conditioning the track, watering the track, and all those safety aspects that go into getting the track ready.
I want to compliment you on that, because I think that independent of our consistency in following the law, regulatory certainty is really what I know I've been after since I've been here, which is there's no big surprises. I mean, there's plenty of surprises in life and in horse racing that we can't plan for, but certainly the more predictable we become, the more transparent on the schedule. I think I've had a lot of horsemen say to me, I don't know where to get an official work, because I think it's been informal. Taking the step this year that we're going to have the condition books. We're working together on your condition books right now, have a preamble that's the same for every race. Put that on the agency website, and there's no question what rules apply to the folks that are racing in Texas. I think provides that predictability and transparency that I think is so important in the regulatory role we have.
And mission number one is protecting the health and welfare of the racing animals and the participants. You all are the most likely to have those quality surfaces, and even though the work doesn't have to be the same length as a full race, the horse doesn't know the difference. He's still going just as fast, and if a jock gets thrown or trampled, he is just as injured. So I think having these things in place, yes, they are an expense, but I think the expense to racing, if we don't do everything that is reasonable to protect, then the expense is much larger, because as some say, the social currency, what are you doing to protect? This is a beautiful sport, and it is very exciting, but I think the fact that we are looking at everything that we can do, because we do want to honor and we do want to protect the racing animals and the participants. And so we do appreciate the Class 1 tracks opening up as official training centers. Hopefully it pencils out for even more dates. We shall see. That's your business decision, not ours. But we do appreciate your willingness to comply with these requirements. Okay, is there anything else about the official training center?
Yes,
the
on
training
the,
facilities?
operational requirements, item C, or excuse me, item E, training facility licensee shall post a condition book. For training facilities, we don't have a condition book, so I don't know if you wanna add in, stall applications or any other types of, rules and booklets that we have.
I think probably the condition books are for your meets, but I think the preamble is going to go to training facilities
Okay,
and also live racing, just in terms of the same safety standards. So the conditions that apply during your live race meet would essentially apply during the official works in terms of the level of safety protocols that we're gonna have in place in the licensing requirements. I think that's the intent
okay,
with that.
And that, you know, if it's an official work, then, you know, these are the people that need to be licensed, and so, you know, it just gets down to the accountability. So when people come, they don't just taxi up there in their thing and they're unlicensed and they got a horse and they, you know, they get it tattooed and then they wanna take it out and work. You know, this is going to be, you know, done so that we know who it is, we know who the horse is, we know who the people are, and once they're there, we're doing all we can to keep them safe.
okay,
And I think I said this at the commission meeting, but it's my intent to try to have at least 4 staff members now at all official works: a steward, a veterinarian, an investigator, and someone from licensing. Because I think the more we can pre-plan, we can understand who's gonna do official works, we can help support that, whether it's a licensing issue or whether it's Steve Bond is committed, our chief veterinarian, to starting to do some not pre-race, but some checks on horses as they come through the gap to make sure that they're in good shape and that their veterinary records are right, just spot checking. I think that'll help the whole industry stay safer. So we're just trying to get better at doing some of that like we always were supposed to.
And you're leaning forward.
I'm interested in what you're saying.
Of course you are. Any input? Are we good? Okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay, there being none, next.
Page
Okay. Page 12, about the,
e-wagering proposal.
okay, e-wagering proposals. Tell us about it.
As I mentioned before, Mr. Azzapardi put in a 3-page letter, and there's some rationale in his proposals, trying to modernize the technology platform. The way we described it in the commission meeting, and I think it's helpful, is to make sure that those who would like to have better access in terms of being inside the geofenced area of the racetrack, which is where we're allowed to do wagering, whether it's through a tablet that's located on the table, for folks who would like to wager that way, particularly folks who may have accessibility issues that can't stand in the line at a wagering window. This will allow more folks to participate in wagering within the statutory limits of what we're allowed to do. Mr. Azzapardi is here if anybody has questions, or I can answer questions. We have had some questions from the governor's office about this particular rule change, and we are having a meeting with the governor's policy office tomorrow on this. But I see no reason, unless they have an objection to it, that we couldn't go ahead and publish this in the Texas Register. But subject to anyone's questions about modernizing the technology used for e-wagering.
Any commentary, thoughts, concerns? Given the fact that everybody on the planet has got one of these attached to their bodies at all times, and people, and also my understanding is trying to hire folks to work and staff the windows is getting to be an issue. I think that this is something that is, the time has come at least for a healthy discussion, if not moving forward, so we shall see. Our concern, and we said it at the commission meeting, we just need to make sure that we do not cross outside the hot wire for those who are concerned about electronics and wagering. So as long as we stay inside the statute and everyone, the governor's office is comfortable with this and the legislature is good, we'll see how this goes forward. So we do appreciate it. Any other
I have
comments?
a question. Tommy or Commissioner Nat, Amy, how many other jurisdictions
across the country have the e-wagering capabilities?
I'm not sure.
So there's only two locations that actually have any kind of mobile application. One is Rotama, has MBET, but it's rarely used. I think it gains less than $5 a week. That was a question asked of me during the legislative hearing in June of 2022 by Representative Huberty. And then Gillespie County Fair also has a mobile application they use when they run, and that's it. So there really isn't.
But we don't know any other racing jurisdictions,
Lone
just
Star
like in
has.
New York, any place like that,
Oh.
that actually has the capability to do what we're proposing.
Oh, absolutely. I do know there's some, I just don't know how many.
So the technology is already in place, the company is already in place that does the geo fencing and all of that capability is already there.
Absolutely. I can tell you that Delmar and Keeneland both have this type of facility. I've used them
Okay.
myself. You know, and we have a gentleman that goes with us to the races who's 96 years old now. And it's hard for him to get up and down stairs to navigate to the windows. So it's more than just technology that the younger generation likes to use. It's also people that have mobility impairments. It's all about creating accessibility for all Texans to go. And as we know in the thoroughbred world, now that we cannot export our signals, it's more important that we do everything we can to get our on-track handle up and more wagering on track and make it as easy as possible for the people that are actually at the facility to be able to make their wagers timely.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of places, Marcia, a lot of.
I mean, my common denominator is a fair number of nonprofits have discovered that doing electronic bidding on silent auction items, so people don't have to get up from their lovely dinner and their several glasses of champagne or whatever other adult beverage, but they can still bid. They've found that their nonprofits were much more successful at their galas. So, people are already trained to be doing things, so I think this is a very interesting technology.
I think
and
it's a
we'll see
great
what
thing,
goes.
and it's something we definitely need. And I just wanna make sure, sometimes being innovative and being the first at something, you're sort of the guinea pig, so I wanna just sort of make sure that we're not the guinea pig on this.
No, not this time.
Well, and I think that, my first visit to Lone Star Park, they were using a mobile application. A previous staff member told them they had to stop. And I didn't know that you'd gone back to it. And this is precisely why we sort of protect this community by having an e-wagering plan where we really make sure I understand what technology we're using. We run it through our general counsel and make sure we feel like we're in line with the statute, because I don't want us to be criticized of expanding beyond our statute, our wagering capabilities. But certainly we have them. We're the only legalized really form of wagering in the state. So we really want to make sure we protect that ability and have all the right foundation. So if someone asked me a question, because I did not know you went back to mobile, and that's probably because I delegated the Parent Mutual management to Virginia, and she's not here, so.
Thank you.
Is there other part?
I will also add one thing, is that the more we've gotten into these rules, the more we've realized that there are a lot of different applications, one of which, the rules as they're being changed now, the proposed to be changed now, gives more authority to the executive director to approve individual e-wagering plans. And one thing that I think somebody from Lone Star may have pointed out, that the problem that has existed in the past, it was more just from the enforcement agency standpoint. Those accounts had to be closed out every day. And that's cumbersome too, because if you're having 2 or 3 big days of racing, it's ridiculous to have to open that account and close it at the end of the day, and open it the next day and close it at the end of the day. These now would allow, if she approves it, to be treated like an out ticket or a voucher, that you don't have to cash every day. You can actually take that voucher back to the track the next day and continue wagering on it. So it's a lot of those little tweaks that would allow us to take advantage of technology, still conforming with the statute. Statutory is actually more permissive than our rules are, and so we're just trying to implement the rules where we can do what the statute says we can.
Okay. Anything else on e-wagering? Great. All right. Certain wagers prohibited. Anything that we need to know on that? And that's, except as otherwise allowed under section 2027.002 of the Act, an association may not accept a wager made by mail, telephone, or by internet. A data communications link for common pooling purposes is not considered a wager for purposes of this section. An association may not accept a wager made on credit. So, everybody on board? Okay.
Dr. McMahon,
Sir.
on that as well, you know, two things. One is our commerce system has changed greatly. I didn't realize until 2 years ago that the Internal Revenue Service now looks at Venmo and PayPal as actual financial institutions.
Right.
And as long as your PayPal or your Venmo account are linked to your debit card, that's considered a cash form of payment. And so there again, most of the younger people that are coming to the tracks, they do everything through Venmo
Right.
or through PayPal. And so this would now allow the executive director to approve those type of payments as well. They're again conforming with the statutes. Then also, it was raised by the racetracks when we were going through this process that currently if you lose a signal now, let's say there's something wrong with the uplink for that tow company, they would have to stop wagering on that race. Well, then we all know now that a lot of people watch their races on their iPads or on their computer at the track. And so as long as that connection so that they can see what they're wagering on through their own devices, and will keep us there again from interrupting the flow of wagering at the track.
Okay. Okay. Any other input? Okay. And duties of guest racetrack. All right. An association that conducts pari-mutuel wagering on a simulcast import acts as a guest racetrack on those dates. The guest racetrack shall provide adequate communications facility, enabling pari-mutuel data transmissions and data communications between totalizer systems of the host racetrack and the guest racetrack. If the guest racetrack participates in common pools, provide a direct telephone line and facsimile machine or other means approved by executive director located in the mutual area to transmit information to the host racetrack in case of a system failure. And 3, to display the audio and video signals of the races being simulcast to the patrons unless the patrons otherwise have access to the program and race information for the simulcast races available within the racetrack's enclosure. After each simulcast performance, our guest racetrack shall provide the reports in its pari-mutuel operations required by subchapters A and B of this chapter. And I think that covers what you were talking about. Any other comments or concerns on this item? Okay. Well, if we stick our noses out, we're just about to cross the wire. Anybody got any other comments? Okay, the time is now, my watch is gonna smart off and tell me what time it really is. It's 1 minute after 11 a.m. With all business concluded, we are now adjourned. Thank you very much. Appreciate your coming.